Welcome to Shaq's house. Shaq's house. That's our Shaq. You're now in Shaq's house. Welcome to Shaq's house.
What's going on, Shackhousers? How y'all doing? It's your boy, the one and only Shack House here. Hope your Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or however you choose to celebrate the holidays went well. And check this out. For the final week of 2024, I'm going with a very obscure group right now. In fact, this group right here, they only appeared in 2 issues ever, and that was during the X-Men Asgardian Wars crossover back in '86. This group, unofficially called the Berzerkers, a bunch of humans that got Asgardian powers but wanted to make the world a better place. That's right, they wanted to make the world a better place, but at a terrible cost. Who are they? What were their powers? And what would happen if a real-life person got the same powers they did with the same cost? It's a question worth pondering, folks. And also, this being the last week of 2024, Happy New Year. That's right, Happy New Year. And ironically, this group, they wanted to bring in world peace with their powers, but I'll let you see the rest. Happy New Year, folks. Haha!
Okay, before we get into each member individually, here's the background spiel of the group unofficially known as the Berzerkers. The X-Man Cyclops and his then-wife, pilot Madelyne Pryor, were transporting by plane an environmental survey team, a mixed group of American and Canadian scientists across Alaska to the Arctic Circle. While en route, their plane was struck down by an unknown source, which turned out to be a fire fountain created by the Asgardian god of mischief known as Loki. In an effort to gain favor and higher status with the greater Asgardian gods, they who sit above in shadow, Loki was petitioned by them to perform a good deed by ensuring peace everlasting on Earth. So to that end, he created a magical fire fountain in a desolate Arctic region of Canada. And this region also contained caves with a preserved Norse settlement dedicated to Loki himself. The fire fountain itself was a large fountain composed of mystical energy, which it absorbed from all sources. As it absorbed more mystical energy, it grew in size and affected a larger area. When the plane crew and passengers came across it, they received magically inclined superhuman abilities. Within a drastically small amount of time, they created a citadel around the fire fountain and took code names to reflect their newfound powers, which they resolved to use in order to make the world a better place. The way the fire fountain functioned was by transforming the internal magic of a human being into an external expression, often causing personal aspects of a person's character or skill set to manifest as superhuman powers. Basically, it gives magically inclined superpowers to people according to their talents. Those exposed to the fire fountain were typically clothed in Asgardian garb and gained peak human strength and stature, even if their gift did not relate to a physical power. But a side effect of the fire fountain was that not only did it consume mystical energy from all sources in order to sustain itself, and thereby killing anyone with magical powers or even a magical background, but it also consumed the internal magic of people in order to create its effects, leaving those transformed by it unable to imagine, dream, or create. After a skirmish with the X-Men, Alpha Flight, and Loki himself, the fire fountain was removed and its effects were reversed, turning all those people affected by it back into normal people. Alright, that's how they got that way, but what can they do? As Anodyne, Madelyne Pryor became a healer. She generated a healing flame that through contact could repair any form of injury or illness in others and likely herself. She could undo physical injuries, wipe away fever or disease, and even eliminate fatigue to restore someone's stamina. In addition, Anodyne's power could erase mental or psychological problems, such as Aurora's personality disorder or Wolverine's berserker rages, leaving him unrestricted by his animal instincts. She could also alter superhuman powers from uncontrollable to controllable, as she did with Rogue's absorbing power and the optic blasts of Cyclops. She could even undo curses of purely mystical inflictions, such as Puck's dwarfism or the corrupting influence of Tanarak on Sasquatch's psyche. Paul Domenic was an architect who became the master builder, able to animate and reshape unliving materials. Prior to exposure to the fire fountain, he had a notebook filled with elaborately designed buildings and structures, and his power enabled him to form these structures seemingly out of nothing. The magical nature of his power meant that he may have literally conjured his structures from nothing, or perhaps he merely made use of nearby raw materials. Once created, he could also manipulate his structures in simple ways, such as bearing a door or causing a walkway to move on its own. His lost imagination meant that he could only create things that he had seen or remembered, though. Actual creation of new designs was beyond his abilities once he received his powers. Dr. Jeanne Chretien was a geologist who became the Earth Mover after gaining power over rock and earth. She could animate large or small masses of geological material, forcibly pushing them in a given direction to create mudslides or speeding rocks. She could also manipulate tectonic activity to create earthquakes, cause cave-ins, and so forth. Avid reader and plain loadmaster Samuel Ross became the Lore Lord, a living library, able to access knowledge simply by focusing his mind on a given topic or chronicle. It was said that the quote-unquote knowledge of the ages flowed through him, meaning he could mentally recall every book ever written or every story ever told. It was unconfirmed whether he merely meant every human book or story, but he could recollect vast amounts of information on any topic, translate languages, etc. Carla Ballenger, aka Cornucopia, could conjure food and clothing at will. She could mend existing sets of clothes or alter them in considerable detail to produce new garments altogether. The mechanism by which she could create food was never shown, but she could apparently summon an endless supply and variety of food out of thin air. Presumably, she could reshape minerals and vegetable matter into food. But like the master builder, Cornucopia could not create new recipes or clothing styles. She could only replicate what she saw or could otherwise remember. As Carla Ballenger, she was the cook for the survey group and was noted for her culinary skills. Boyd Wilson was an anti-mutant zoologist. As the Beastmaster, he had a natural affinity for the animal kingdom. He could communicate with animal life and direct animals to carry out actions on his command. This power also extended to Wolverine's animal side, allowing him to temporarily manipulate Logan's actions or even erase portions of his memory. He could also adapt animal characteristics within himself. Nick Rodriguez was the navigator for the fated chartered flight. As Pathfinder, he possessed a psionic navigation sense that gave him a natural compass and allowed him to locate and track down anything he wished. He was killed by Wolverine when Logan came close to learning the fire fountain's secret, however. As the Brawler, Jacques Moreau demonstrated tremendous strength, endurance, and resistance to physical injury, even for the naturally powerful Berzerkers. Presumably, he drew energy from his environment to increase his physical capabilities. The Lord of the Plants was a botanist named Phil Descartes, who gained the ability to manipulate plant life, causing it to grow at an accelerated rate and respond to his mental commands. Okay, here's my take on this group. They were awfully short-lived, and with the exception of Madelyne Pryor, they have not been seen since this X-Men Alpha Flight two-parter. In fact, their appearance was part of the X-Men Asgardian Wars X-Over in the mid-80s. The group's mission was to make the world a better place with their powers, but it was like a critique of We Are the World, especially with how the part about the fire fountain was going to spread and transform everybody, but kill off magic users and all forms of creativity. And since magic was at the heart of this story, the X-Men or Alpha Flight could have called Doctor Strange or even Illyana Rasputin. I mean, both those characters are the Sorcerer Supremes of Earth and the Limbo dimensions, respectively, and Illyana was part of the New Mutants at the time. Of course, if they had any involvement with the Berserkers storyline, there wouldn't be any storyline. And also, the Berserkers, they were never referred to as such in the story. That name was only used in solicitation and promotional material. Now, the Fire Fountain, it amplifies talents to superhuman levels that are backed by magic. Heather Hudson from Alpha Flight, she's a mere human with nearsighted vision and insecurities about her place in Alpha Flight at the time. When she emerged from the Fire Fountain, she had perfect vision, was dressed up like an 8-foot-tall Valkyrie, and claimed that her power was to lead. That implies that she could take initiative and others would always follow her guaranteed, and that she'd take the lead in anything, competition included. However, she lost her imagination in the process, so if someone were to explore those implications, it would mean that Heather wouldn't be creative in ways of leading. She would only go with what she knows or has already seen. Also, it was mentioned that the fire fountain does not affect those with pre-existing superhuman powers. So how, pray tell, did it transform Madelyne Pryor into Anodyne? Because at that point, she was still a Jean Grey clone with latent psychic powers. I don't know, perhaps it may have been a lie to prevent the X-Men and Alpha Flight from overpowering the Berzerkers. And as stated, the fire fountain gives superhuman powers based on special skills and talents, but at the cost of creativity and imagination. But check this out. Say if you're an office worker, a really good office worker with good administrative skills, or better yet, someone like Waylon Smithers from The Simpsons, who is an uber personal assistant. Say Smithers went into the fire fountain. What would his powers be? I'd say he would have superhuman attention to detail, that is, understanding, internalizing, and remembering every word of a conversation with Mr. Burns or business partners, irrespective of distractions. He would also have hyperactive listening, which technically falls under attention to detail, so scratch that. And lastly, augmented time management skills, which would allow him to intuitively allocate perfect amounts of time to tasks, ensuring punctual completion without ever feeling rushed. But part of his job involves communication and adaptivity, and with no imagination, Waylon Smithers certainly could not come up with new ways to do either one. Former New England Patriots football coach and current UNC football coach Bill Belichick, think about what would happen if he went through the fire fountain. Oh, it certainly would make him taller, but it would also make him a superhuman football coach, giving him intuitive knowledge that would allow him to mentally access information from all sources about football, tactics, and apply them in some greater expertise fashion. However, if you were to ask him to come up with any new plays, I doubt he'd be able to do so. Okay, let's take this to another direction. Let's go with, say for example, Prince. Prince being exposed to the fire fountain would most likely have allowed him to use his music for superhuman effects, both mental and physical. But then, there'd be no vault of unreleased material from him, and we'd be stuck with Purple Rain forever. And lastly, let's think about someone with no imagination or creative thinking ability whatsoever. What would happen if they went through the fire fountain? The reality-altering character who's known as the Shaper of Worlds, the well-known limit of his power is that he lacks a creative imagination. So him going to the fire fountain, who knows what'll happen? And who knows what'll happen if this guy right here, if he got exposed to the fire fountain? Actually, I know. Donald Trump going to the fire fountain means that he will be turned into this. Yeah, very scary. Alright folks, that's what I got for you for my last video of 2024. I thank you all for your support, Shackhousers. I thank you all because without y'all viewing and commenting, I wouldn't be doing this. 2025, we're going to go bigger. We're going to go way larger. So you tune in next year, and I hope you'll have a good new year, folks. Later.
Mansion, apartment.
Shack house. Yes!
Yeah.